Good morning, and thank you so much for inviting me to come here this morning. I don't often get the chance to join the early bird, and I'm very happy to be doing that today. So my name is Jean. I am a compulsive overeater, and I have been in OA. I'll be coming up on 4 years in OA next month, and I think I was a good month in OA before I really embraced it. I think I have a long story of surrender and resistance to surrender. Um, so what I'd like to do this morning, I think, is talk about my more recent experience, strength and hope, because I think what I have absolutely discovered as part of OA and the recovery journey is, as it says in the big book, this phase of our recovery. So I've grown to accept that I will just go through multiple phases. I think it took me about 2 years to accept that I wasn't done and that I would continue to go through phases as life happened. And that's absolutely been true. And I think, in particular, in this last 6 months, I've absolutely embraced that surrender and acceptance into um, what is now, what is this phase, but I don't believe I will ever do so easily or elegantly, is probably the best way to describe it. Um, so we talk often about the three legs of recovery, the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual. And I would say that in the past, well, actually, all three are always at play. But there is no question that over the course of the last year, my spiritual growth really deepened. And there was a number of shifts that came along. And I think for those of you who are in the meeting who perhaps have had a more challenging time with the spiritual side, I know for me that was quite difficult for the first year. Finding the God of my understanding was quite a challenge, and that was obviously largely down to just that resistance, the ego. And so I think as I listened to the steps being read this morning, it's always interesting which ones jump out. And I would say for the last few weeks, steps 6 and 7 in particular have played a significant role in my recovery. So let me look at the three pieces of it. So from a spiritual point of view, I have absolutely been able to hand over more. And I'm fairly certain what has enabled me to do that handing over more and more was genuinely the acceptance of my limitations. I think there's something very humbling when you finally realize that actually, no, you don't have the capacity to make all these decisions, to solve everybody else's problems, and it was a journey for me to get to that handing over, but it was an incredible relief. It was a really beautiful psychic shift, if you like, that came over me. I almost felt my whole body relax. So it has become almost second nature for me now when I have a challenge or a decision in front of me to hand over. And I can tell almost immediately when it's Jean trying to make the decision, because it's usually there's a different energy, there's a different, I guess that's when my ego's kicking in. So from the spiritual point of view, that has been something I use two-way prayer pretty much on a daily basis. And that has been, I would say, a lifeline for me spiritually. And I'm also very, very blessed with a sponsor who has really strong recovery and a deep spiritual experience. So that spiritual side of it, when I started introducing that into my day-to-day at work, um, with family, with friends, rather than just for myself, I think I had put my spiritual connection in a little bit of a column. And it was interesting for me when I started to bring it into all of my decisions. So that takes me back to 6 and 7. I recognized, thanks again to a really honest sponsor, and by doing my regular check-ins, by sharing openly and honestly, she helped me see quite some time ago what a role my ego played in the experience of recovery. I think I'll put it that way. Recovery for me has taken many shades. Sometimes it feels very joyous and calm, and sometimes recovery for me feels quite challenging and painful. And what she highlighted was this living in today. And I got this sudden image and understanding that when I go to bed at night, while I'm sleeping, my ego rebuilds itself. And what it reminded me of was during lockdown many years ago, I had a Lego project with my daughter and we built the Hogwarts castle, which was this ridiculously enormous thing that then continued to gather dust and really play no great purpose in the kitchen. But it stayed there for quite some time. And I had this really powerful image of, gosh, my ego is literally like the Hogwarts castle rebuilding itself every night. I might take it down and put it away in the box at night when I do my inventory, and then I come back in the morning and there's the blessed thing all built again in the middle of the table. So I think that's what was the image that stuck with me to understand the role that my ego plays. So all that to say, I have identified myself as fiercely independent for a number of years, largely because I've had to be, largely because of circumstances. And my ego has allowed independence to become a personality trait as opposed to a necessity. And that was a light bulb for me recently, that's where a lot of my let go and let God resistance has come from. That feeling of independence was preventing me from actually handing over. So sometimes it's our capability that can get in the way. The story we tell ourselves. Step one, I never had an issue accepting that I had a problem with food. I had a significant issue accepting that my life had become unmanageable. I could have listed for you 75 things that I was doing in my life that would demonstrate just how manageable my life was, because I wouldn't look at the 750 things over on the other side that would indicate it being unmanageable. Thank you. So that set of circumstances, that independence, the journey into spiritual awakening, the phase of my recovery that I have found myself in the last 6 months, has had a strong physical element because I've been physically very unwell. I've not previously had a lot of health issues, but unfortunately in the last 6 to 8 months I have had, and it culminated in me having to have a hysterectomy it must be about 11 weeks ago now. And my goodness, was that an exercise in surrender and acceptance. And I think my God just wanted to keep it a little bit interesting. So in addition to going through probably my most physically weak time in my life, I was also experiencing my first serious proper relationship since I divorced 6 years ago. And that has been a really interesting journey. I was at a meeting yesterday and we were sharing on different elements, and one of them was honesty. And I was reflecting on the fact that I have always found honesty incredibly easy in my recovery. I wouldn't say that it was easy for me before because I was a people pleaser, but in recovery it has been. And I remember, I would sit in meetings and I would hear people talking about how they were irritable, restless, and discontent, and how their partners were affecting their ability. I can't be honest. And I would sort of sit there in my little ego glow of, oh gosh, I never get irritable, restless, and discontent. I'm happy, joyous, and free, and this is all lovely. And then I got into a relationship and I thought, oh, hello, irritable, restless, and discontent, my old friend. Nice to see you again. Haven't seen you for a while. And what's been really interesting for me, and I'm so grateful for my sponsor a number of weeks ago pointing me back at 6 and 7. It's been incredibly interesting to see how much growth is needed in my emotional sobriety, but also how incredibly helpful it is to have the let go and let God muscle now that I have that spiritual growth. So now I've been in a number of scenarios where I can feel a surge of anger or frustration or irritation, and before recovery I would have pushed that down, ignored it, pretended it wasn't happening. I would have probably eaten on it, but I certainly wouldn't have addressed it. I wouldn't have been honest, and I wouldn't have tackled it in a calm, mature way. And what was fascinating to me after that, let me go back into 6 and 7, is when I was confronted with my reaction to something. I went for a walk with God. I was very honest with my partner. I said, I'm actually feeling really angry right now. I'm not quite sure what's happening. Please just give me the space to go and work this out. And I now have a new spiritual, emotional tool, and I guess physical, because I get my steps in, is I go for a walk with God. And if you'd said to me even 6 months ago that that's something I would do, I would have probably I would have put my eyebrows together. I wouldn't have been too sure about it. But what I was able to do was really embrace the keeping my own side of the street clean. What's happening here? I didn't make it about what someone else was doing. I made it all about, so what's happening under the surface here? What does God need me to know? And instead of potentially causing a breakdown or a breakup, I was able to have a really deep, calm discussion about what was happening. It further helps my partner understand my 12-step journey. He's keen to help, but he doesn't really understand it because he keeps asking me, and there's never going to be a time where you're just like fixed, you're done, and it's all good because you put a lot of work into this. Surely you'll be done. I said, no, the work is actually part of the joy now. I said, that is the day to day. So what recovery has enabled me to do is step into a really happy phase of life that I can categorically tell you, if Jean had been in charge of the show, I wouldn't have stepped into. This is a God job, because I am currently sitting in my car in a storage container yard behind a van that I was driving last night because there was an emergency. My partner has an events company, and I ended up at a mansion in Edinburgh running a photo booth, which is so far removed from my day job, I cannot begin to tell you. And so this morning I manoeuvred my way round two enormous dogs, a German Shepherd and a German Shepherd Collie cross, and a very passed out and snoring partner who got in at 4 a.m. doing another event, to come into my car. And I was smiling. I mean, I've had about 4 hours sleep, and I was smiling as I was walking around because I thought, this has to be a God job, because on no planet would Jean have sat down and painted this picture of what her life would look like. So I think what's been really, really beautiful for me in recovery is being in today, being able to let go and let God, because I absolutely believe with each passing week that God knows way better than I ever will. And actually having that emotional maturity to just let go of what I think should be happening and how things should be. And I think that's been my biggest pain point in my life, is the expectations that I have had of situations, the expectations I have of myself. So I'm making progress. It's definitely not perfect. I don't always understand what's happening, but I now, more than ever in my recovery, trust that the right thing will happen if I let go and let God. So so that has been interesting. So 6 and 7 have become my I don't know if you can have favorite steps. It's like children. You're not really supposed to have favorite children either. And I think it depends on the phase of your recovery. But I think I kind of dashed through 6 and 7, and I am going to be living in 6 and 7, I think, for the foreseeable. But anyway, that's my story for today. And I'm really grateful for you listening to my rambling. And with that, I pass.